It can be a temporary disability or short-term disability, or unfortunately due to some mishappenings, it can be a permanent disability as well. So of that 26%, the difficulties that those users would definitely have are around, the vision or auditory capabilities or cognitive capabilities, mobility, hearing. All of these would be affected when we age. So if we have grandparents or aged parents, you would really understand or relate that, because the capabilities with respect to their vision, their audio, their understanding, cognition, or even mobility would diminish when their age increases. So if we take those set of users as well, we would have something like 40% of our user base who will need these considerations to be made, right? So the number of users or the percentage of users is definitely not a small number. And for that aspect, we definitely need to include accessibility as one of our main areas. Now, the next question you might have is, okay, I understand what accessibility is. I understand the number of users are quite big and we really have to do it. But isn't that the responsibility of one team, probably the testing team? It is actually not the case, right? Every team member has a role to play. Let it be starting from the executive leadership to coming down to, Ayush, can you move to the next slide, please? Let it be from the executive team, the senior most team, to start including accessibility into the streamline of the product or the process, to the project managers, legal, procurement team, designers, developers, testers. Each of us have our own role to play. The senior management may start the game of accessibility, but until and unless we play our part in that game, the game will not be a success. We will not see the real accessibility being implemented in our projects or in our projects, because that is the only way forward for everyone to be involved. It can be started by the senior management, but it will trickle down to the last member of the team in every department to make it a success. So the end point is definitely that it is not a single team member's area of expertise or responsibility, but it is something that is spread across each one of us to play with. So with that, Abin, I'll pass it on to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aparna. I think that was a wonderful summary of who are responsible. But then, the interesting question now becomes like, okay, I understand who are responsible, but then how do we go ahead and start this journey? And this is typically from my, experience with talking to various clients, where I've seen that they would kind of come to us with one a compliance deadline, right? They're trying to go ahead and maybe sell in the US market, and then they kind of say, okay, we need to kind of sell a compliant product, and then eventually we figure out there is a deadline when a client wants to buy one. And then the other question that they normally come up with is, what standard should we follow? Should we follow WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0, 2.1? Or is there something else that we should know? What is Section 508? Things like that, right? So knowing what standard of accessibility should be followed is important. Then the other important aspect that comes up is, how do we start? What's the scope of work that we should provide you, right? Should we start with an audit? And if we have to start with an audit, then how do we start with this audit, right? Like, what do you need? How do we kind of quickly define the scope and get started with the work? So all of those kind of comes as well during, you want to plan your accessibility journey ahead. And then with some of the larger corporate clients, they might also have a third-party vendor who might have built their platforms, right? Their mobile apps, their website. And then it also becomes a question, who becomes responsible for implementing accessibility? Is it this company who has got a third party help, or does the third party help the client with getting accessibility done? And most importantly, I think the last question is more about, how do I get accessibility as a day-to-day thing with my internal development team as well as my testing team? Right? Do I have a team which can do accessibility testing internally? If yes, do I have the requisite tools? Do I have the requisite knowledge? All of that, and the same applies with development as well. So those all kind of comprise to kind of think through that how typically the journey should be planned. And then with that, I think the important aspect is, when does companies actually focus on accessibility? Typically, when does the leadership look into this as an important aspect, right? And it is typically when one, you have a compliance concern that is being highlighted. Someone pointed it out saying, okay, things are not in place. I'm not able to use your site, your mobile app, etc. And then the other aspect is that, as a proof of compliance, that okay, yeah, we have done the audit, we know where we stand in terms of accessibility. That is where you want to do an audit and kind of figure out, is the website or mobile app accessible to people with disabilities, right? Which is very, very crucial. And then also kind of determining the risks. The risks could typically be like, a legal risk, like someone in who is not able to use a website or mobile app might go and file a legal suit, and I don't want to kind of have a bad reputation, right? So I would want to ensure that I am kind of preaching that my website or my mobile apps is completely accessible. And to do that, I need to know where I stand, and for that, I need to do an audit and get a report which comprehensively explains the issues as well as kind of tells me where and what I should fix. And then on a regular basis, we typically we should be checking the work to see, okay, what are the kind of accessibility issues are coming up on a day-to-day basis, and are we aligning all of that and fixing all of them? So the screenshot that you see on the screen right now, that kind of explains, like, it is one of our tools that goes ahead and explains what kind of accessibility issues are there on a particular website, what are the various user impacts, how many components are kind of inaccessible and stuff. So we do a audit to kind of using both our automation and manual testing things to figure out, how can we give you the best report so that you are able to implement accessibility to the core. Um, and typically how that entire process works, I think Aparna, you would want to explain that quickly.
Absolutely. Thanks, Abin, for giving that context on the audit itself. So for all the reasons that Abin has just mentioned, you have decided to start an audit because that is the first step in the journey of getting compliance of your website or your product, right? So you would start you've decided to start the audit, and you need to understand how you need to do it or what needs to be done. Of course, there is the WCAG standards, to which if it is the web content, then it is WCAG standards. If you're talking about any other tools, then it's going to be a different standard, like authoring tool accessibility guidelines. But the way or the process that an assessment would ideally take is to decide on the standard to which you want to test against. And once that is decided, you need to know which assistive technology. Now, just for the benefit of everyone, assistive technology is an umbrella term that we use to define any technology that a person with disability might use to get to their chores. Like, it can be a screen reader, it can be a screen magnifier, a speech input software, anything, right? A technology that can assist a person with disability to do their work is referred to as an assistive technology. So you have to decide upon the assistive technology because there are many screen readers out in the market like NVDA, JAWS, narrator, voiceover, and you need to make a choice on which screen reader you want to use, or which screen readers do you want to use. And then you have to decide on the browser that you want to use to test it. And once all of that has been decided and fixed, you start the assessment. And that happens by using both automation testing and manual testing. Automated testing in-house, we have our own tools. We use like Axcore, which is a free browser add-on that you can all use to see the automated issues. And then when it comes to manual testing, it should be done by experts, because WCAG is notoriously hard, and implementing or interpreting it accurately becomes the major part of your job. So ideally, it should be done by experts. Using actual users to find real problems become even more important, because that is going to give you an end user perspective also, though it is not necessary, but it is definitely suggested. And then not just assessment, right? Not just finding the issues, but understanding those issues and finding ways to remediate that becomes important. So getting understanding and getting the remediation help is very essential for the success of this accessibility audit. This is the first step, and understanding the output becomes really important, right? Now, that brings us to the question, okay, I've got my assessment done, the audit is done. I see about 100 issues on hand that I need to fix. Now, can I fix everything in one go? Unfortunately, the answer is no. When you're trying to fix a known accessibility issue, there are a high chances that you're actually introducing newer issues into the code. You might be fixing an accessibility issue, but you might be actually introducing two more issues into your code. So it is an iterative process. It is not going to be a one go. It is definitely an iterative process that you need to follow to ensure that all your issues are fixed. And I'll pass it on to Abin to kind of talk through that. Abin, on to you.
Thank you, Aparna. And I think just to summarize that, I think what you just made as a last statement, we all know that accessibility is a journey, right? It cannot be ever a one-time process. With every sprint that you release, it's important to check accessibility.
Yep.
The ideal approach that we normally kind of suggest to fix accessibility issues is one, integrating accessibility into every sprint. Let's not be happy just by, okay, I've got accessibility done in a 1 quarter and then, okay, everything is in place. It is not, because the moment you make the next release next quarter, there is a chance that you might break what you've fixed, in the last release. And most importantly, it's important to keep a track of what's changing. And we have various tools that can help you keep a track of that. And I'm sure there are other tools in the market also that can help you keep a track of that. The other important aspect is the people who would actually go into fixing these issues, they need to have enough knowledge about fixing accessibility issues, because accessibility issues every issue cannot be fixed using automation. There needs to be an intervention of both automation as well as manual. And to get to a stage where you are able to identify manual issues and then kind of move towards a potential fix to it, the team which is doing it, which is the development team, the design team, the testing team, all of them should be trained on accessibility. So one important goal is to definitely find out the accessibility training needs within the organization and get people the training they need eventually to go and fix the accessibility issues that gets identified. And then can we go back to the previous slide, please? Yeah. And then we also have other tools like, for example, Xdev tools, as you see as a screenshot below, which can actually, right now we have a trial of 14 days that everyone can play with. But this tool kind of goes ahead and helps you not only to identify all the issues on the page, but it also helps you to kind of identify certain things. Like we have implemented a component called IGT, which is intelligent guided testing, into the tool, which kind of gives works as a guide, and based on the responses that you give to the tool, it kind of starts telling you what you should do as a next step to fix issues. And then finally, the other important aspect to fix accessibility issues is work with experts who understand in depth about WCAG guidelines, what should be fixed. So if you have someone like a subject matter expert as a vendor, or within your company, who can guide you step by step, okay, do this, do this to build a good design, or do this to go ahead and fix development issues, that would eventually help and make it easy for you to fix accessibility issues. Next slide, please. And then the other important aspect is, okay, Abin, whatever you've told us now, we know, and we can now go ahead and fix certain issues. Great. And assuming we've been able to also get help of SME or a third-party vendor to fix stuff, that's also great. But the next step is, how do we know for sure everything is taken care of? And to do that, you need to go through a validation exercise where, for example, when our clients come to us for validation exercises, what we do is we go ahead and look into whatever they have fixed as per the previous reports that we have shared, involve our manual testers, involve our automation tool, validate everything has been fixed, and look for any new issues that might have been introduced, and kind of provide a report so that that can be taken care of. And then we work with the client kind of end to end until all the issues have been fixed in a particular quarter before the next release is done. And we prefer to kind of call ourselves as partners rather than a vendor, because that's how I think accessibility should be fixed as a journey. So once this validation is done, now that should actually bring you to the exciting phase of getting certified. So I think getting certification is important, and Aparna would be able to give us more light on what certification works and how we should move forward. Aparna, to you.
Thank you, Abin. Okay, so how does, first, even before understanding the choices that we have or what we need to do, let's see the reasons how the certification would help. Definitely, it's going to make it easy to sell our products to enterprise companies, because many of the big companies require the vendors or the agencies from where they would either buy a product or a service to be accessibly compliant. And one way of letting that be informed to everyone is via conformance of your application. So definitely that certification is going to help you there. Of course, if it is, if you're a part of an agency or an organization which needs legal implications or requirements to be met or to be compliant, then that is also going to be the second, really a big major reason why you should be looking at accessibility certification or compliance. And this is something that is good to have, right? Even if socially or in the market, if you say our product or our website is digitally accessible or compliant, then you're actually, the certification will help you flaunt that status openly, and make it a big thing for your organization, because it is seen, something with respect to diversity and inclusion is always seen as a good gesture from the organization. So that is another point that would really play a major role in your organization's outlook or the way people would see your organization. And as I said, excuse me, it shows your commitment to diversity and inclusion. And that is all that. Apart from that, it is easy to clear certain evaluations by your customers or clients. If you're, for example, if you're looking at, engaging yourself with any Vpad government in US, or any agency with deals with federal government, or, any other government, in fact, UK is another example, you need to provide a Vpad or a conformance statement or any other form of proof of where your application is standing with respect to accessibility. That is part of the application. Without that, you're not even considered to as one of the one of the people who they need to consider, or one of the team who needs to be considered for that engagement. So all of these definitely are not small reasons. These are the major reasons for any organization's growth or lookout. Now that we understand the process, the reasons why we need to look at the certification, let's look at the actual choices that we have when it comes to certification. So we have two of them. One is conformance statement. Another one is Vpat. And in next couple of minutes, we will look at each of these options and what they really stand for. So if you see, the first option is Vpat. And what does Vpat stand for? It stands for Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. So this is something that you are voluntarily giving out about your product. It doesn't have to be placed on your website. It can be provided upon request. So sometimes you may just say that we are accessible compliant as per WCAG 2.0 level AA guidelines. And if you need to know more about it, please ask us for our Vpat. It is important that the Vpat is made for every release of your software, because I've seen some Vpats of the vendors who have provided us with a couple of years ago. Does that mean that in the 2 years your product did not really go through an update? It would definitely would have gotten some updates. The only thing is that the Vpat did not get updated along with those updates. And if I'm providing you or your client, or you are giving your client an old version of the Vpat, then the question then comes, are they really taking accessibility as a serious aspect in their development? So keeping your Vpat up to date is essential. And then, so apart from that, what does really Vpat consist? It, no, can you go back to the previous slide, Aish? Thank you. So Vpat, what does it state? It states accessibility standards that your product or services meets and warns about the issues that are present, meaning your Vpat is going to have a long table of all the success criteria from WCAG, and you would be saying whether each of that success criteria is supporting, does not support, partially supports, or not applicable. These are the 4 status that you would have for every success criteria. Supports is when you do not have any issues. All the reported issues against that particular success criteria are fixed, then that is supports. If you have a lot of instances of a success criteria failing, then that is going to be does not support. Say the success criteria is failing only in 1 or 2 instances in the complete website, then you can say it is partially conformant. And for success criteria which do not apply, then you can say not applicable, meaning you may have, there are certain success criteria with respect to multimedia. But if you do not have a video or audio, it is okay to say that your application supports it, but you have to give a note saying that there is no content that is applicable to this success criteria. So it is by default supporting that SC, right? So a Vpat is a success criteria based report, but does not give you at a page level, like, page level kind of issues won't be reported, but you would find which success criteria your application is failing at or passing at, or it does not completely pass. These kind of things are given in a Vpat. So apart from that, what would it really consist of? Then it consists of a report title, the what kind of title would you want? It will most likely go with the name of your organization. Then Vpat heading information, which is the template version. Is it 2.4, 2.3? What version of the template is it? Then you were going to give the name of product or version, which is including the version of the product that is being reported, and a very brief description of the product as part of the product description, and the date of report publication. When are you publicizing this particular report, that particular date, and any contact information for follow-up questions. Say, for example, I want to know more about your application with respect to Vpat. Whom should I get in touch? So usually your accessibility program office or an accessibility manager, someone who is responsible and can answer those questions. That person or those people contact information will be provided, and any notes if you want to provide about, like, we haven't covered third-party content, or the particular scope is not part of it. Those kind of notes can be given in the notes section. And evaluation methods used. Have you used automation? Have you used manual? Those kind of, or how did you identify the issues? Those will be going into evaluation methods and the standards against which the Vpat is being written. Is it 2.0? Is it 2.1? Is it section 508 or is it EN 30159? What is the standard against which this Vpat is holding itself true? That would be the applicable standards. And then you would be giving the test results using, as I said, supports, partially supports, does not support, or not applicable. And it is okay to make it, to add a note in the remarks section. We're saying that this particular content is not present on our website, and you can make it, instead of not applicable, you can give it a support status, right? So these are what a Vpat consists of. So the important aspect for you to remember is keeping your Vpat updated, keeping it, you don't have to have it available on the website. You can always make it be available upon request. So an email can be sent and you can send it to that person or the whoever is asking. But Vpat is an essential thing to let your customers know about your compliance level. Now, is this the only choice that you have, or do you have anything else? We definitely have a conformance statement. So what is a conformance statement? It is very much different from a Vpat. It is a document which is given by a trusted third party that details the level of accessibility for your organization. Meaning, if you hire DQ can give a conformance statement, whereas Vpat is something that you need to produce as an organization. Of course, your third party teams can help you, your vendors can help you, but it is essentially your responsibility. But when it comes to conformance statement, that can be given by a trusted third party consultant, right? It is going to give you, it is not going to give you a success criteria based report, but it's going to give you the number of pages which are having a good score, which are not having a good score. So that kind of information would be given. And it will only have two conformance levels at a page level, not at an SC level, but at a page level. Say you have a scope of 10 pages, and out of that, you would have 9 pages pass and 1 page fail. That will be recorded in the conformance statement, right? So all the pages have passed, but in this one page, we do have some issues, but we are not going to tell them what issues we have. It is also a kind of giving an outlook of where we are standing, right? But if you're looking for Section 508 compliance, or your ability to work with government agencies, then conformance statement is not a choice. It's going to be Vpat, because it is essential for those entities to understand what success criteria is failing and what is that. Is it does not support, or is it partially supports? Does not support is like that SC is that issues against the SC are present in multiple pages. Partially supports is the contrary. There may be 1 or 2 instances, and you need to specify those 2 instances in the remarks column as well. Where, or rather what type of issue and where that is present also needs to be part of the Vpat, whereas conformance statement will not be covering those aspects. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, so conformance statements really consist of a summary of conformance, whether it is confirming or not confirming, and in case if it is not confirming, where exactly or which page exactly is not confirming. Then scope of conformance, the pages that have been tested, testing methodology, again automated and manual, and test results where the exceptions to conformance, like which pages, like we just give a summary of the list of pages which are passing and which are failing. So that would be a simple conformance statement, right? Again, so just to briefly give you the differences between a Vpat and a conformance statement. Abin, would you want to take this over?
Sure. Just to kind of lay out the quick differences, Vpat, it's more of a success criteria specific reporting. Conformance statement, it wouldn't be a success criteria specific reporting. If you have a Vpat and if you're trying to sell your product in the federal gov, that works because they respect Vpat reports. Versus conformance statement is more of a piece of information. It's not detailed out. It just is not enough to evaluate you against a compliance requirement. Vpat provides you obviously a lot of detailed reports on the issues. And conformance just says whether you're conformant or not. It does not reference issues at all. So that's the other part of it. And then this has 4 levels, as you see, right? It is like supports, does not support, partially supports, or not applicable. And in conformance, either it's pass or it's fail, right? So there's no middle way for it. So that's kind of a quick difference between the stuff. I think we have a couple of minutes. So I would want to kind of maybe start off with the questions. Let's see what questions we've got. Let me read out a few questions quickly. Right. I'll try to pick up the most relevant ones quickly. I think one of them is, I have an out of agenda question. Please answer if time permits. What's the alternative to talkback or voiceover if I don't own a physical device? Aparna, do you have a context on that?
Yeah, sure, Abin. So if you do not own physical device, it's difficult for you to kind of immaculate the screen reader. But if you don't have an iPhone, you try getting a Mac, though they are different, but the experience may be similar with respect to voiceover. But other than that, I really don't know if there is any other choice with respect to assistive technology. Is with respect to the way it may look in a mobile device can be given out, but really no other choice other than owning the physical devices if you want to experience the screen readers.
Right. I think there's one other question. It is there any country specific Vpat report that exists? Each country will be some specific rule set. Yeah, I think that is true. Considering, as Aparna mentioned earlier in the conversation, that in Vpats we do mention against which particular guideline that Vpat holds. So for example, if it is EN 301549, we will mention that. If it is WCAG 2.1 or 2.0, we'll mention that. And even for India, there is something called GIGW. If it is against that, we can mention that. So yes, based on different countries and their rule sets, Vpat can change, right? And I think the other question then I have here is the certification focused on coding? I am a UX UI designer, will be able to attend course without knowing how to code. Yeah, you can reach out to our team, which is marketing-india@dq.com, and they can provide you with more details around various courses that we have. The other question is, do certain countries have a mandatory accessibility compliance on mobile apps? If yes, then which are those countries? Also, is it possible to bypass accessibility compliance? Aparna, you want to take this quickly?
Sure, Rapin. Definitely native applications are part of any standard like WCAG. And almost all the countries, so if you take US, you take Canada, you take Australia, UK, the whole of Europe, in fact, mandates that all the native applications are compliant against WCAG 2.0 level AA or 2.1 level AA. So there's really no way that you can outpass it if your customer demands it or needs it, because that is going to be the future, right? They would need all the public and private facing, eventually they will need all the public and private facing websites or native applications to be accessible. We have seen quite a few cases being lost on that realm as well. So I think rather than looking at ways to go over it, you need to look at the ways to embrace it and take it forward. That would be a correct approach.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aparna. I have a question from Rahul. The challenge I'm facing is that it is getting hard to pinpoint the changes required in application required to achieve the accessibility standards. The senior management demands exact changes and level of effort. How can we know what exact code changes or design changes required? Rahul, I think the good answer to this would be using tools. And in Deque, we have a tool called Axe Monitor, which can actually help you to keep a track of changes and can help your leadership team to also know what is changing, what changes happened, last quarter or last month, last week, things like that. Please feel free to reach out to our sales team, and they should be able to set up a demo and explain to you about how the tools work. And I think you can get a solution to your challenge. I'll move on to the next one quickly. It is Vpat and Acr same? Typically, it is not, right? Because it is accessibility conformance report and Vpat, as we just outlined. There is a comparison table. And if you have more questions, Ranjit, we can always, you can reach out and we can answer them individually if it is very specific. The other question, Aparna, we have here is Deque preparation course kit enough for VAS and CPAC certification, or any additional thing I need to study or master? I think you just have to reach out to our sales team. They can guide you with the Deque University courses that can help you get extensive knowledge for your VAS and CPAC preparation. Sadish Kumar says, can you share an example of Vpad report? Yes, please feel free to reach out to our team at marketing-india@deque.com. We can share a sample Vpad report with you. The other question is there any template or list of questions available which can be used for accessibility requirement gathering, either for assessment or for new existing project? How can a template exist for performance testing and automation or automation? Aparna, any clue on this?
So I don't get the complete gist of the question, Abin. Are they looking for questions on, what needs to be checked against designs, what needs to be checked against testing, or is it like overall, what should we ask our clients about accessibility?
I'm guessing it is the other one, right? What is there a template? Yeah.
So there would be two different ones, one for design, one for testing, obviously, because there are two different ways of looking at it. And we do have something that is available on the Deque site. I think if you can reach out to us, Sadish, we can definitely give you that document out to you.
Right. I'll try to take a couple of more questions and then we will see. So a question from Shipra, she says, how can we convey in Vpat or conformance statement how much our product is accessibility compliant? Is there any compliance grade / level criteria?
Okay. Shipra, there wouldn't be any grade or level criteria, but depending on the number of success criteria you're supporting or does not support, which would be explicitly given in a Vpat, your customer or like your client or the team you're putting the bid to would understand where your product is standing. If I see way too many does not supports or critical success criteria does not meeting the needed standards, then I know your application is not accessible, which means it is not compliant. And then comes the question: do I have anyone else who is a better, at a better level with respect to accessibility or not? Also adding your approach towards accessibility, like what is it that you're taking, not may not be as part of Vpat, but as part of your accessibility statement. So how soon would you be remediating or being compliant? All of these matters if you want to win the bid. But definitely, that is how I would read a Vpat, depending on the success criteria that are supporting and does not support. I can understand where your product is standing with respect to accessibility.
And Shupra, I'll get back to you, and maybe if the time permits, we'll allow you to quickly speak about the further query you might have. Let me just quickly try finishing the rest of the questions here. One of the other question is from Kavaljit, in terms of evaluation for accessibility against WCAG, how different is DQ tools versus Axcore API? Kavaljit, we can give you a complete picture of that. Please feel free to reach out to Ayush, AYUSH Sharma, SHARMA, at dq.com. And he can actually set up a demo for you and explain to you the differences between DevTools and Axcore API. There is quite a lot of difference, but I think it will be better to showcase that as a part of the demo itself. The other question comes from Vinayak, and it says, which guidelines do we refer for mobile accessibility testing and tools? Aparna, any thoughts on that?
Mobile accessibility, it's going to be WCAG. If you're talking about mobile web, it's going to be WCAG. Even if it is a native application, we still refer to WCAG, but some of the success criteria may become invalid or not applicable. But otherwise, on a whole, WCAG is the Bible we refer to.
Correct. Quick question from Hita is a Vpad a prerequisite for a conformance statement?
Not really. They are two different entities, and we would suggest you to go to Vpad because it has a much broader range. But depending on your need, a conformance statement is also another choice. Neither of them are dependent on each other.
Correct. The other question from Kavaljit stays is, how can we get Vpad or conformance statement by testing using DQ Xdev tools? Can we get the certificate? I would still say, Kavaljit, you should have a demo. But again, to answer this question broadly, Axe tools, Xdev tools will kind of do the automation bit for you, but there is still a little bit of manual intervention that needs to happen. So Axe tool can cover up to 84% of accessibility issues, versus there will still be a gap of around 14% that needs to be covered manually. So once both of those are done, yes, you are kind of set to get a Vpat or a conformance statement post an assessment evaluation from our team. So our sales team can give you more details on that.
But I mean, just to add to that, Kavaljit, it is not a prerequisite that you have to use DQ tools. Vpat is a template out there. You can get it. And the gist is, yes, our tools help you to do the assessment, but that is not a prerequisite to get a Vpat. Thank you, Abin.
Perfect. There's a question from Kavita. Can you tell us the list of certifications that should be done? Kavita, I will request you to reach out to our, I'm mentioning Ayush's email in the chat. Please reach out to Ayush. He should be able to guide you in terms of the certifications. I think there are a few more. Prasham, how is accessibility different for B2B business versus B2C business? We have a complete documentation around that, Prasham. Ayush will be able to share that with you. We are just making a note of it. And then the other question is, the challenge I'm facing is that it is getting hard to, okay, I think we've answered that. What will be the color contrast ratio for a clickable element? example links, accordance, etc. Is it going to be 3:1, 4:5:1, or the same rule applies as of regular text or large text?
Same rule as regular text or large text. Whether it is an interactive element or a non-interactive element, it is text. So it would be considered as same way you treat the other elements.
Okay. Nirmala, I see your question as what are the certifications for accessibility, but I'm failing to understand if it is an individual certification you're asking about or kind of a client certification, which would typically be the Vpat and Conformance. So please feel free to let us know. We should have an answer for you there. Whose responsibility is it to create a Vpat or a conformance statement? What is that person's eligibility and role called?
Okay. So it is whoever owns the product, right? It's their responsibility to create a VPAT or a conformance statement, and usually it is the accessibility program officer or accessibility manager. They would be the people who can write such VPATs. Of course, understanding WCAG or understanding accessibility to its depth is really a prerequisite for such a role. Unfortunately, not much of an academic qualification can be provided, but someone with a good experience with accessibility should be able to do that.
Right. And then the other question is there a tool which helps us to create standard VPAD template quickly? Unfortunately, the answer is no. It has to be an involvement of manual audit and then writing it out. There's no tool to write an automated VPAD report. Any issues which Xdev tool identifies are valid issues, or do we manually have to re-verify the issue? Vinayak, as I said, Xdev tools can find out typically 84% of automation issues. There will be a gap of around 14. Again, it depends on the page, the content and all of that, but there will be a gap of around 14% or so, which still has to be manually looked up. The last question is, I think, please specify the most used tool for accessibility. Again, it's kind of a question that it doesn't have one answer to, but again, we know there are a lot of tools in the market, but what we are more aware about is the downloads that we have got for our tools. And as of now, Axe free version that is from Deque has the highest downloads that we know. We've crossed, I think, around more than 30 to 40 million downloads, which is a pretty big number, and it looks like that's a very useful tool that everybody is kind of enjoying right now. So that's the questions I had. In case anyone has more questions, you can always email us. So you can email Aparna at aparna.pasi@deque.com, or you can email me at abin.choudhury@deque.com. Ayush, if you can put both of these email addresses on the chat, that would help. And thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry we did have to go a bit over time, but it was also trying to answer everyone's question and also considering all the technical glitches we had. Finally, we will share a short survey post this webinar, and we would request you to write down what you felt was your top wow moment from this webinar. And with that, we'll kind of wrap it up with a quote from Deborah Rue saying, accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you so much for taking your time and joining us and providing your attention in detail. Here is our emails also listed in case you want to make a note of it. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Thank you.